I be like, sheesh, sunset on the beach. Make me wanna pull up on Miami with the heat. I don't know about
What is going on, guys? Welcome back to the Anytime Sports Podcast episode. And today we're going to be without Colin. He had a few things to do. So I'm going to go over last night's draft, which we all know that happened. Let's just get right into it. First, starting off, we know the first picked by the Carolina Panthers was Bryce Young. Really great for this team. Very quarterback-needy team after losing Baker Mayfield and being with P.J. Walker. Now he's with the Bears. They were back and forth last year in quarterbacks. Plus, now they lost Christian McCaffrey as well. But this year they got Miles Sanders, a brand new young quarterback. Maybe they could turn it around. But after they traded up with the Bears to get that first overall pick a few weeks back. Bryce Young, very good player. One of the top two quarterbacks in the draft, personally for me. Only con is that he's a little short, 5'10". But he can make it work. Yeah, he was banged up this past year, but other than that, he proved he can play. He proved he can be that starter for that team. So I'm guessing he'd get the week 1 start. So we'll have to see how he plays with that team because he doesn't have many weapons there, but we'll see if they can make a couple more moves in the offseason. Moving on to the second pick in the draft. This guy could have gone 1, but he didn't. C.J. Stroud went to the Houston Texans with pick 2 in the draft. He's a little taller of a guy. I personally think he played a little better than Bryce Young in the draft, or past year in college. He put up more consistent numbers. But, I mean, the Panthers Panthers wanted Bryce Young. That's their guy. C.J. Stroud goes to the Texans. Obviously, Colin would be pretty disappointed. They don't have faith in Davis Mills anymore. But really, it seems like a repeated thing for this Texans team is picking quarterbacks every year. They don't pan out. They need their guy. Hopefully he could be their guy. He proved it in college with Ohio State. We know Ohio State produced good quarterbacks. Justin Fields came from Ohio State. C.J. Stroud, he's been put up some good numbers these past years. A little taller than Bryce Young, but yeah, C.J. Stroud's second pick in the draft. Moving on to the third picks, the Houston Texans draft. They traded up in the draft with the Cardinals for this pick. They picked Will Anderson Jr., obviously the best defensive player in the draft. The Bears would have picked at 1. They would have picked this guy. Out of Alabama, he looks phenomenal. He was the best, probably, in my opinion, the best defensive player in this entire draft. But yeah, very good pick for them. They need some help on that defense. This Texans team really has been struggling these past couple of years. We'll have to see if these new guys can pull it together for them this year, maybe put up a couple more wins than the past years. Moving on to the next draft pick, another quarterback. Indianapolis Colts select Anthony Richardson, 4th round, for the 4th pick. He's out of Florida. But yeah, third, obviously, without a doubt, the third best quarterback in the draft. Will Levis was up there. He could have been picked. Anybody could have picked him, but he's still out there for day 2 in the draft, which I'm filming this before day 2 happened. But yeah, Anthony Richardson, great guy, tall guy. Really, like, Colts needed that guy, Matt Ryan. They had Matt Ryan last year before. They had Jacoby Brissett. Year before that, Phillip Rivers. They haven't had that young guy since they got Andrew Luck, and they really got screwed over once he left the team also suddenly. But yeah, hopefully Anthony Richardson can turn it around for this team and help them succeed in the future. But yeah, they do have Michael Pittman still. They do have JT. So if they can pull the things together, the Colts could very well compete for their division. We know last year they did not do well. But yeah, maybe they can compete and with a guy like that. We'll move on to the next pick with pick number 5 in the draft is the Seahawks. They got this pick from Denver when they traded Russell Wilson, but they got Devin Witherspoon from Illinois. Yeah, obviously this guy, very, very good stud. Probably the best cornerback in the game. With the 5th pick, I think they definitely do need that help in the backfield. We'll get into it later in the episode, the other guy that they picked. But yeah, great defensive back, great guy for this team. I personally, from watching him in college and everything and reporting on him, he was obviously great stud, lockdown guy, perfect for the Seattle team. So we'll have to see how he pans out this year. But the Seattle team is a very young team with their draft picks last year, with their quarterback, Geno Smith. He's a little older, but getting things together for them. But yeah, very good pick by the Seattle Seahawks. We'll move on to the next with the 6th pick in the draft. The Cardinals select Paris Johnson Jr. Offensive tackle, yes, very good for this team. They do need that protection for Kyler Murray. They were struggling this past year. I did not realize how bad they were struggling until I looked at their record at some point during the season. But very good for this team. More protection up front. Really, any team that could get protection up front, that's great for them. I'll get into some teams later in the draft that really needed that. But like these quarterbacks like that are scrambling quarterbacks like Justin Fields, Lamar Jackson, Kyler Murray, really need that protection up front so they could sling the ball. Paris Johnson, obviously the best offensive lineman in the draft, or picked the highest. So we'll get into later in the draft or later in the episode the other guys that did well. Now with pick number 7 in the draft, the Las Vegas Raiders select Tyree Wilson, edge from Texas Tech. One of the other best defensive players in the draft. Very good for this Raiders team with Max Crosby, and then new quarterback and offense, Jimmy Garoppolo, really trying to pull this team together after a struggling season last season. Losing Derek Carr, they do have Devontae Adams still, so hopefully this team can pull all this stuff together with a young guy like Tyree Wilson. Maybe get in there, attack, help the defense out, give the offense a little break. And maybe Jimmy Garoppolo and Devontae Adams can connect, but we'll have to see what this Raiders team has in store in a very tough division. Moving on to the 8th pick, Bijan Robinson from Texas, picked by the Falcons. Very great for this team. They have an old guy at running back. He was good the past couple of years, Cordero Patterson. But this guy, Robinson, best running back in the draft, my opinion. He showed why he could be a stud. He showed he has that Derrick Henry power. And for a team like the Falcons, if he could pan out and be a good running back for Desmond Ridder, both very young team here, so we'll have to see how this pans out. This team does also have I can't forget his name, the tight end, but very good team, very young team. We'll have to see how they pan out into the future. Very, very interesting. Okay, now for the 9th pick in the draft, this is where the Bears would have drafted. The Philadelphia Eagles traded up to get this guy, Jalen Carter, defensive tackle out of Georgia. He was projected a few weeks ago to be in the top 5, but he had some allegations and stuff like that, so he dropped in the draft. But obviously one of the best defensive tackles in the entire league, or in the draft. Eagles traded up 1 pick. They had the 10th pick, but they wanted Jalen Carter, so they said the Bears, they gave him a 5th round pick for the future, so they could draft Jalen Carter. But obviously at the 9th pick, this was a great pickup by them, especially by a team who made the Super Bowl this past year and has 2 first-round draft picks. He's going to be very, very helpful for this team. Now for the 10th pick, Darnell Wright. Chicago Bears select Darnell Wright, offensive tackle out of Tennessee. As a Bears fan, personally, I wanted an offensive lineman. You need the protection for Justin Fields. Last year he was struggling. You get those guys up front. Now you have Tevin Jenkins. You have Cody Whitehair, and then you have Darnell White and other young guys that picked up in the offseason. We Bears have a lot of spending money this year. If you could pick up some more linemen, now the Bears have Justin Fields, Chase Claypool, Darnell Mooney, DJ Moore, and if Justin Fields can sling the ball as well as use his legs, this Bears team can be a very, very strong, powerful team. Within the running game, the Bears have Khalil Herbert, but Darnell Wright is a very good pass blocker, not the best run blocker, but he had 0 sacks allowed this past season, which obviously shows why he's one of the best linemen in the draft. And if the Bears are picking this guy this high, he's got to prove it, and he's going to show why he's picked this high. With pick 11, the Tennessee Titans select Peter Skoronski out of Northwestern. This is a guy a lot of Bears fans wanted their team to pick, but the Bears needed a tackle, not a guard. Peter Skoronski is a guard. He's a little smaller. He's about 6'1", and then he's about 6'3", a little lighter. Darnell Wright is a bigger guy. He's 6'6", 330. A bigger guy that definitely the Bears need. But Skoronski, obviously the Bears fans wanted their Northwestern guy to play for Chicago, but he is a Packers fan, so I'm kind of glad he didn't go. But for pick 11, the Titans need the help up front. There's a whole bunch of stuff going on with this team. They didn't pick a quarterback. They don't believe in Malik Willis. Ryan Tannehill's banged up. He's old. Really, I think this is going to be a rebuilding year for the Titans, to say the least. But maybe they'll pick Will Levis later in the draft like they did with Malik Willis last year. But we'll have to see where they go with that. I don't really get this pick. With 12th pick in the NFL draft, the Detroit Lions select Jahmyr Gibbs, running back out of Alabama. You got DeAndre Swift. You got David Montgomery. Now you're picking a stud rookie in the first round. I mean, looking at his highlights, he's nothing special. But definitely overpicked him. He could have gone late first round, early second round. But I think if you're Detroit, this is not the pick you want. You don't want a guy like Jahmyr Gibbs. You want a guy that could be put on your defense. Maybe a defensive lineman. They need definitely defensive backs, considering like the gambling allegations that have gone on without that team and the guys you are missing out on. But definitely, I don't know why they picked him. I mean, he's great. First-round guy, he's a stud in college, but really, this is not the guy you want when you're a team like the Lions who needs help up front, who needs help on the defense. Well, we'll have to see how they pan out this year with 3 good running backs, guys who've showed themselves. Really not going to get much playing time. We'll have to see how that pans out. With the 13th pick in the NFL draft, the Green Bay Packers selected Lucas Van Ness. I was just laughing at this pick. This is coming from a Bears fan. I mean, he barely got any playing time. He's a linebacker out of Iowa. He barely got any playing time in Iowa this past year. He didn't even start. I mean, he's shown in the past he could be a good guy. He could compete. But if you're the Packers, this is not your number one need. You have no receivers. You have Jordan Love as your quarterback. You just traded away Aaron Rodgers. What are they going to do here? They have Romeo Doubs and Christian Watson and some NPC at wide receiver. This team is going to need to prove it this year if they want their young guys to succeed. We'll have to see how the Packers pan out. But losing Rodgers is going to be, I feel like it's going to be very, very hurtful for this team. Moving on to the next pick, the 14th pick in the NFL draft, the Pittsburgh Steelers select Broderick Jones out of Georgia. Don't really know much about this guy. He's not obviously an offensive tackle. They need that protection for Kenny Pickett up front. Very good pick by the Steelers. I'll move on to the next. With the 15th pick in the NFL draft, the New York Jets select Will McDonald out of Iowa State. He's a defensive end. Definitely need that defensive help. They got those offensive weapons. They got those offensive linemen. Putting a guy next to a guy like I forget, but Quinton Johnson, I think, on the line for the Jets, putting a guy on the outside that can attack and prove he can play. Will McDonald has showed it in college. Now he can show it in the big leagues on a team with Aaron Rodgers and with Allen Lazard. A team that basically is the New York Packers. They got all those Packers players, but definitely a team that can compete this year. They showed they can compete last year, especially with Sauce Gardner on that defense, Garrett Wilson on that offense. A bunch of these guys who are powerhouses and showed they can play really well. Coming up, pick 16, Washington Commanders select Emmanuel Forbes out of Mississippi State. He's a defensive back. Yet you need that defensive back help on that team. I don't really know what this going to go on with this team this year. They don't have a quarterback really, unless they make a move in the offseason. There's a couple more quarterbacks floating around. But they did release Taylor Heineke. If they're going to go with Sam Howell, probably that's what they'll do. But you'll have to see if that guy pans out, or else you'll have to pick up a different guy. But they have Scary Terry on that offense. They do have still have God, I forget his name. But yeah, on the defense, and definitely gonna trying to compete and trying to get a guy like Emmanuel Forbes back there. But yeah, we'll have to move on to the next with the 17th pick in the NFL draft. The New England Patriots select Christian Gonzalez out of Oregon. And he's a cornerback. Definitely need that help in the backfield. Patriots haven't been a competing team the past couple of years, but maybe they could turn it around. Mac Jones in the offense. Defense could give him a break. Maybe he could pull off a couple picks, but he's obviously the best player out of Oregon in this draft. One of the best cornerbacks. A lot of defensive backs selected in this draft, but I'll move on to the next. With the 18th pick in the NFL draft, the Detroit Lions select Jack Campbell, linebacker out of Iowa. This guy was the better linebacker, I would personally think, over Van Ness, which the Packers selected. But yeah, I think this is where they should have gone the first round. They should have gone 2 defensive players instead of or they did go 2 defensive players, but I think the Lions should have. No, they did go for a running back, but I think the Lions should have gone 2 defensive players in the first round, and instead of going running back and then linebacker, they should have gone like maybe defensive back, linebacker, defensive back, get those rookies going. But we'll go to the next pick with the 19th pick in the NFL draft. The Buccaneers select, I don't know how to say his name, Kalihaj Kancey. He's a defensive end from out of Pittsburgh. Great for this team. Need that defensive help. They're going to be struggling without Tom Brady this year. So defense could give him a break. I really like this pick. Next pick number 20 in the NFL draft. The Seahawks select Jackson Smith and Jibba. Very great guy out of Ohio State. Him and C.J. Stroud had that connection. Too bad they couldn't reconnect in the big leagues. But this team is going to be such a great team this year. With JSN, with Lockett, with DK, and Geno, along with their rookie running backs, I think they're going to be phenomenal this year. Young team, very young defense, played so well last year with a guy like Geno on the offense. But adding this young guy in your receiving core, very great for them. Moving on to the next pick, the 21st pick in the NFL draft. The Chargers select Quentin Johnson out of TCU. He showed he could play. He showed he can play in the college football playoffs and the championship. He single-handedly brought TCU to the finals. I think one of the best receivers in the draft, and the Chargers to get a guy like this with Justin Herbert, those two young guys together, on a team where your receivers are a little older. The Chargers Chargers have struggled these past couple of years, but hopefully they can pull the things together with this guy. And they can finally compete this year. They're in a very tough division, so they'll have to prove themselves with him. Hopefully he can be Justin Herbert's number one guy. With the 22nd pick in the NFL draft, the Ravens select Zay Flowers out of Boston College. Obviously one of the better receivers in the draft, one of the best receivers. And the Ravens also did just re-sign Lamar Jackson, plus picked up Odell Beckham Jr., so getting a young guy like Zay Flowers in there for this team, and to have guys for Lamar Jackson to throw to if OBJ stays healthy, if Zay Flowers stays healthy, this team can compete really well this year. They do have a solid defense. If they can put those things together, they could play very well. Okay, moving on to the next pick. The Minnesota Vikings select Jordan Addison out of USC. He's a wide receiver with pick 23. But yeah, if you have a guy like, I don't think this was the way to go for the Vikings. They have Justin Jefferson. They have Dalvin Cook. They have that offensive help. I think they need that defensive help after losing Eric Kendricks, after losing couple guys on defense. They need that defensive help. Maybe get a young guy in defense instead of another receiver, but I guess another guy to put next to Justin Jefferson, and we'll have to see what this Vikings team does this year. The next pick in the NFL draft, the New York Giants select Deonte Banks. He's a cornerback out of Maryland. This team really proved all of us wrong last year with how they played, so maybe get another young guy in defense, which they did. And yeah, they can compete. They can play very well. Maybe catch him a break, get a couple interceptions, get Daniel Jones back on the field. But yeah, very great pick for the New York Giants. All right. I definitely thought this guy should have gone a little earlier. With the 25th pick in the NFL draft, the Buffalo Bills select Dalton Kincaid. I think this is a very good pick for them. He was a stud, obviously the best tight end in the draft. Very big guy, very talented guy. He's out of Utah. But for a team like the Bills to get this with Josh Allen, with Stephon Diggs, with James Cook, a team that showed they can compete these past couple of years, for them being able to get this guy and really help them out in the offense a little more. Get a guy. They do have Dawson Knox too. He's getting a little older, but getting a guy like Dalton Kincaid in there, maybe could sit a year behind Dawson Knox, and then once Dawson Knox gets a little older, maybe Dalton Kincaid could get the starts. And yeah, he showed he could play very well. He's a big guy. Great pick for one of the best picks in the draft, I think, especially at the spot that he dropped to. I think the Packers, he could have been picked at the spot where the Packers picked him, which I think that's where they should have picked him. But yeah, very great pick by the Bills. With the next pick in the NFL draft, the 26th pick, the Dallas Cowboys select Mazi Smith out of Michigan. He's a defensive tackle. Yeah, you need that defensive help on that team. Maybe they do have Tony Pollard. These young guys, getting all these young guys out in the field this early, maybe he could get a few starts. He'll probably get a start week 1 if I had to guess, but I don't really know much about this Dallas defense, but very great guy. I'll have to see how he competes this year. With the next pick in the NFL draft, the Jaguars get some help for Trevor Lawrence up front. They pick Anton Harrison out of Oklahoma. As I said earlier, a lot of these young quarterbacks need that help up front. The Jaguars have been building over these years up front, getting a guy, an offensive tackle, in a spot they struggled at last year, and getting that young guy in there who showed he can play in college, who showed he can compete in the probably compete in the big leagues. Getting a guy that could protect Trevor Lawrence like that. He could go out there and sling the ball, like I said earlier, with Justin Fields and the Bears. You're letting him sling the ball, getting that protection, protecting your guy, showing he can compete. That really helps him out this year, and along with all of these other teams drafting quarterbacks. With the next pick in the NFL draft, the Cincinnati Bengals select Myles Murphy out of Clemson. He's a defensive end. I think this is a very great pick as well, with this Cincinnati team changing in the offseason, changing and competing every year, getting that help on the defense, making this defense more of a powerhouse. That's going to help you out in the future and being able to compete more. With the next pick in the NFL draft, the Saints select Brian Brees out of Clemson. He's a defensive tackle. Another great guy for the Saints, especially with the new offense this year, new offensive look with Derek Carr. Being able to keep that defense going. This defense has been a powerhouse these past couple of years, or historically been a great defense in New Orleans, but adding a young guy like this obviously will help him out. Moving on to the next pick, the Eagles also select Nolan Smith, who's a linebacker out of Georgia, in the first round. And someone's going to stop this Eagles team. For them being able to pick two defensive players out of Georgia in the first round, along with being able to compete for the Super Bowl this past year, and Jalen Smith getting an extension, and this team building up young players, definitely going to see a Super Bowl champion out of this championship out of this team in the next couple of years, but especially adding a young guy like Nolan Smith and then earlier Jalen Carter. Those guys on the line, along with Jordan Davis, who they selected in the first round last year out of Georgia. This team is basically the Georgia Eagles, but basically getting those young guys on the team will help them out in the future. And with the last pick in the first round of the draft, the Kansas City Chiefs select Felix Anudike-Uzomah out of Kansas State. He's a defensive end. This very great for this Kansas City team who won the Super Bowl last year, and definitely will compete again this year, and getting that young guy to help with on the defense. Very helpful for this team. But yeah, that's the first round of the NFL draft. I hope you guys enjoyed. I don't know if we'll be doing any coverage on the second round, third round. Maybe in our next episode we'll cover some of the highlights. But I just wanted to do a quick run-over episode over the first round of the draft, give some of my quick opinions on these teams and who they picked and who would be the best for those teams. But I hope you guys enjoyed. We'll be back soon. Peace.
We ain't done yet. Oh no, we just begun. I like those colors.